Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. We're here. I forgot to start the music. We're here. We're ready to start our Thursday. It's Thursday, our Thursday news show here as we are headed into the end of the week. And I've got some stories. Raj has got some stories, and we have no idea how that's gonna pan out because you didn't actually tell me what your stories are, but it's okay. It'll be a surprise for me and the viewer. Let's go ahead and get into our
we're not gonna have the same stories.
Yeah, no, of course not.
I'll play the lottery if we do.
Right. Exactly. So let's go ahead and day on Before Coffee. Gotthard rail tunnel, world's longest, closes for the month after a Swiss derailment.
Why was Kanye West publicist trying to scare Ruby Freeman? Well, here's the Rudy cellmate, treating him like he treats his personal assistant.
First cargo ship leaves Ukraine port since end of grain deal despite Russian threats.
While we are still making plans for Nigel, Tropical Storm Hilary creeps up into Southern California.
New plant-based pork ribs to feature edible vegan bones.
And scientists recreate Pink Floyd songs by reading brain signals of listeners. These stories and more, as all in all, it's just another Thursday morning in August. The 17th to be exact, as we uncover the news that was buried by the bullshit on Before Coffee.
All right, our first news story. Oh, I didn't reset the audio. Let's start with the first news story here.
Thursday.
Rog was constantly covering train derailments in the U.S., and now we've got a train derailment in Switzerland. 16 freight carriages run off the trails. This is from Guardian staff and agencies. Train passengers between north and southernmost Switzerland will have to skip the world's longest train tunnel and go back to the longer scenic route for months. Rail authorities have said after a freight service derailed and tore up the track. Wow. Tore up the track. Not only did it fall off the track, but it took the track with it. 16 cars that jumped the track in last Thursday's derailment remain stuck inside the 57 kilometer or 35 mile long Gotthard base tunnel in the southern Ticino region, National Railway Operator SBB said on Wednesday. No one was injured, but the damage was considerable. Pictures showed, among other things, wine bottles strewn along the tracks. Not the wine! The tunnel is a crucial thoroughfare for goods and cargo, particularly between Germany to the north and Italy to the south. In 2022, more than two-thirds of the rail freight traffic through the Alps passed through the tunnel, according to the Swiss government. One side of the tunnel, the tube that was unaffected in the derailment, should be operable in principle starting next week. For cargo trains, SBB said, passenger train traffic would have to wait for months. It appears that the extent of the damage is considerable, greater than shown by the first estimates. In total, about 8 kilometers or 5 miles of track and 20,000 concrete railroad ties have been replaced. Wow, 20,000 railroad ties, SBB has said. Restoration work should continue until the end of 2023. Passenger trains will run on the panoramic route until further notice, it said. The alternative routes adds an hour for domestic travelers and 2 hours for international travelers. That's not too bad, I guess. The tunnel was, unless you have a meeting, it's like, oh, sorry, I have to leave an hour earlier. The tunnel was opened in 2016 amid enormous fanfare and a lavish choreographed theatrical show involving scores of performers. Wow. And then this one freighter train destroyed it all. Leaders of France, Italy, and Germany were all at the inauguration ceremony for the Gotthard, an engineering feat deep under snow-capped alpine peaks that took 17 years to build at the cost of 12.2 billion, I guess, Swiss francs, or 12 billion US dollars. The tunnel was created to help cut travel times, ease roadway traffic, and reduce air pollution. Although Switzerland is not one of the 27 members of the European Union, the EU railway network gets a big boost from the shortcut through the Alps. The tunnel fits into a border freight network that runs from the Dutch port city of Rotterdam to Genoa, Italy. Wow. So I guess
there's a train trip we're not taking.
Yeah, I'm not going that way.
Yeah.
Once we get on a freighter, but then that freighter might crash. All that wine will get all over our clothes. So that sucks. But
that won't be our worst problem.
I'm sure they said they're planning on opening it again next year, so we can always go next year to the Swiss Alpine Trail here on the trains.
There's always next year, as they say in losing sports franchises. There's always next year.
There's always next year. That's my story.
Okay. All right. And we're back to covering the individual people who are been indicted along with Donald Trump. I don't know if we're going to do this fully, but we're gonna investigate this one because this one is really extra shitty. And this is from the New York Times. Let's see. Nicholas Bogle-Burrows. The publicist tied to Kanye West got caught up in the Georgia Trump investigation. Trevian Kuti is better known for her work in the cannabis and entertainment industries, where she has been tied to Ye, the rapper formerly known as Kanye West. Many of the people who have been tangled up in the investigation into whether President Donald J. Trump illegally meddled in the 2020 election in Georgia are familiar with the names in the world of the federal politics. But another, Trevian Kuti, is better known for her work in the cannabis and entertainment industries, where she has been tied to Ye, the rapper formerly known as Kanye West. Ms. Kuti showed up at the home of rank-and-file Fulton County election worker Ruby Freeman on January 2021 after conspiracy theories about Ms. Freeman improperly handling votes had spread online. Ms. Kuti, she's a cootie, I guess, claimed to be working for some of the biggest names in the industry. And the two, it could be Cutty, I guess. And the two eventually met as it's K-U-T-T-I. I claimed to be where Miss Kuti shared an ominous warning claiming to Miss Freeman that an event in the future would disrupt your freedom. She offered to help Miss Freeman, but Miss Freeman later told Reuters that Miss Kuti had repeatedly tried to get her to say that she had committed voter fraud. In addition to her work as a publicist, Miss Kuti was also lobbied on behalf of the cannabis companies in Illinois and operated as high-end fashion stores. She has become an ardent supporter of Trump in recent years. Ye has met with Trump in the past and voiced his support for him. Prosecutors said that Ms. Kuti's meeting with Ms. Freeman was part of a plot to get her to falsely confess to election fraud, and court records showed at a special grand jury sought testimony from Ms. Kuti. A spokesman for Ye said that Ms. Kuti was not working with them at the time her meeting with Ms. Freeman, which leads to this editorial in the New York Times written by David Firestone. The Georgia indictment speaks to history. Who is going to be treated better, Ruby Freeman or Rudy Giuliani? Mr. Firestone is a member of the editorial board. It says at the beginning. Decades from now, when high school students want to learn about the great conspiracy against democracy that began in 2020, they could very well start with a 98-page indictment filed Monday night in Georgia, in which former President Donald Trump is accused of leading a criminal enterprise to stay in power. A criminal enterprise they refer to over and over again in the indictment, which I was reading last night when I fell asleep. It's 98 pages. No one knows whether these charges will lead to convicting Mr. Trump and other conspirators or keeping him from power. But even if it doesn't, the indictment and the evidence supporting it and the trial that ideally will follow will have lasting value. Unlike the other three cases against Mr. Trump, this one is an indictment for history, for the generations to come who will want to know precisely how the men and women in Mr. Trump's orbit tried to subvert the Constitution, undermine American democracy, and why they failed. It is a statement for the future that this kind of conduct is regarded as intolerable, and that the criminal justice system, at least in the year of 2023, remain sturdy enough to try to counter it. History needs a storyline to be fully understood. The federal special counsel, Jack Smith, told only a few pieces of the story in an indictment limited to Mr. Trump, focusing mainly on the groups of fake state electors that Mr. Trump and his circle tried to pass off as real in the pressure campaign that Vice President Mike Pence to certify them. But in Georgia, Fani Willis, the district attorney of Fulton County, was unencumbered by the narrow confines of the federal law and was able to use the more expansive state RICO statute to draw the clearest, most detailed picture yet of Mr. Trump's plot. As a result, her story is much broader and more detailed arc of treachery and deceit, naming 19 conspirators and told of 127 increments of each one, an overt act in the furtherance of conspiracy, forming the predicate necessary to prove a violation of the RICO Act. Neither of the indictments, unfortunately, holds Mr. Trump directly responsible for the January 6th riot, a tale best told in the archives of the House January 6th committees. Not each of the acts is a crime, but together they add up to the most daring and highest-ranking criminal plot in U.S. history to overturn an election and steal the presidency. And a plot that appears to have violated Georgia law, leaving no question about the importance of prosecuting Mr. Trump and his co-conspirators. Ms. Willis has risen to the occasion by documenting a lucid timeline, starting with Mr. Trump's brazen false declarations of victory on November 2nd, 2020, November 4th, 2020. Why did I think that said the second? And continuing with scores of conversations between the president and his lawyers and his aides as they tried to persuade a number of states to decertify the vote. The narrative contains tweets that might just be eye-rolling on their own, such as Trump utterly false claim that Georgia Democrats had fed phony ballots into voting machines, but that the context demonstrated a relentless daily effort to perpetuate a fraud well past its forced exit from the White House on Inauguration Day. The world knows about people like Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, who was asked by Mr. Trump to find them enough votes to overturn the state election, and he refused. He knows about Mr. Pence, who rebuffed his bosses to demand they certify the vote on January 6th, and officials in other states and the Justice Department who collectively helped save democracy by resisting pressure from the conspirators. But Ms. Willis, in trying to tell the full story, made sure the high cost paid by lesser-known figures was also recorded for the books. Specifically, the indictment, which focused on the outrageous accusations made against Ruby Freeman, the Atlanta electric worker who was singled out by Trump and his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, for what they insisted was ballot stuffing and turned out to be nothing of the kind. Mr. Giuliani told the Georgia House Committee on December 10, 2020 that Ms. Freeman and her daughter, Shay Moss, were quite obviously surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they were vials of heroin or cocaine. Oh, look at Rudy. Oh, they must be drug addicts. What a piece of shit Rudy is. Did I editorialize just there? Did I? Anybody? Oh yeah, I did. Rudy Giuliani's a piece of shit. He is. Prove me wrong. For this, Mr. Giuliani, who admitted last month that he had made false statements about the two women and is facing a defamation suit they filed, was charged in the indictment with the felony offense of making false statements. Ms. Freeman, who was also targeted by other conspirators charged in the case, and she may well have been chosen for that role because she is black, and was thus a more believable villain to the kinds of people who have most ardently swallowed Mr. Trump's lies for many years. Oh, you mean the racists? We can just call them racist. That's what they are. I mean, oh my God, they're coming over the border to get us. Who's coming over the border? Oh. Who'd want you anyway? Dude, you suck. As the indictment painstakingly lays out, Stephen Seeley, a Lutheran pastor from Illinois, went to Mrs. Freeman's home and tried to get her to admit to election fraud. He was charged with 5 felonies. He enlisted the help of Willie Lewis Floyd III, a former head of Black Voices for Trump, to join in intimidating Ms. Freeman. Mr. Floyd was charged with 3 felonies. Travion Kuti, a publicist in the worlds of cannabis and hip-hop, was also recruited to help Ms. Freeman, who said Ms. Kuti tried to get her to confess to voter fraud. Ms. Kuti now faces 3 felony charges. In the vast carelessness of this scheme, to use F. Scott Fitzgerald's phrase, the plotters smashed up institutions and rules without regard to the resulting damage, willfully destroying individual reputations that might help their cause. Ms. Freeman was one of those who was smashed, exposed by Mr. Trump to ridicule and abuse, though he never paid a price. Now, thanks to Ms. Willis, Ms. Freeman's story will reach a jury in a judgment of history, and the record will show precisely who inflicted the damage to her and to their country. Yes, David Firestone, the editorial guy, you were exactly right. And of course, there's a video. You can check it out, because once Ruby Freeman found that she was being intimidated by these famous people with connections to famous people, she had to meet at the police station. And so she sat there at the police station in full view of a police body camera, and there was a cop sitting there filming the whole thing. So it's on film, and we can watch it anytime we want. Kanye West publicist trying to get Ruby Freeman to admit that she committed voter fraud when she didn't do anything whatsoever. And basically threaten her with kidnapping. Yep. I'm sorry?
Trying to coerce a confession out of her, basically.
Oh, basically insinuating kidnapping if she didn't do it. Yes.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh, yeah. Perhaps, what does this mean? Okay, here's the word. This Kuti claimed to be working for some of the biggest name in the industry, and claiming Mr. Freeman, an event in the future would disrupt your freedom. What does that sound like? Kidnapping. All right.
So, yeah.
So she's going to prison. Kanye West says, I don't know that bitch. Sorry, that's rap parlance. All right, parlance. Biatch. Sorry.
No, nobody said biatch
Nobody in rap ever said that?
In 20 years, nobody's said that word. Yeah.
Kanye West is an old fart now, you know.
Is he?
Gold Digger was 20 years ago. Got it.
Okay.
All right. I ain't saying she's a gold digger, but she don't work for me. Your story.
Okay. In my story news, I'm braiding my hair while I'm reading this. The first cargo ship leaves the Ukraine port since the end of the grain deal, despite Russian threats. That's right, you can't stop the grain from coming. This is a civilian vessel, not a military vessel. They don't even probably have guns. So, this is from more Guardian staff and agencies, just everyone's reporting on this. A civilian cargo vessel has left the UK southern port of Odessa, Kyiv has said, despite warnings from the Russians that the Navy could target ships using Black Sea export hubs. The announcement raises the specter of a standoff with the Russian warships after Moscow pulled out of a key deal last month brokered by the UN and Turkey, which guaranteed safe passage for grain shipments from 3 Ukrainian ports. Ukraine's infrastructure minister, Alexander Kubrakov, said that Hong Kong flagged Joseph Schult left on Wednesday morning from the port of Odessa, one of the 3 ports that participated in the now scraped grain export deal. The Joseph Schult is the first vessel to sail from the port since the 16th of July. Wow, that's a long time. According to Alexander Kubrakov, Ukraine's deputy prime minister has been stuck in Odessa since February 2022. Damn. It's been sitting there, just hanging out in a war zone, being like, man, I wish I could go back to being a merchant and transporting stuff on my ship. The ship was traveling down a temporary corridor that Ukraine asked the International Maritime Organization, IMO, to ratify. Ship insurance likely to be high for operators. Ukraine has told the IMO it would provide guarantees of compensation for damage. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomed the development. Ukraine has just made an important step toward restoring freedom of navigation in the Black Sea, he said on social media. Joseph Schult was off the coast of Romania en route to Turkey, a maritime tracking website showed early on Thursday. Since Russia's exit from the grain deal in July, it has stepped up attacks on Ukraine's Black Sea port infrastructure and facilities in Kyiv uses to export grain through the Danube River. The governor of Odessa region said on Wednesday that Russian attack drones had damaged grain facilities out of a report near Romanian border. The Air Force, meanwhile, said it had drowned 13 Russian drones over Odessa and the neighboring Mykolaiv region. Incidents sparked outrage in the EU member Romania, now a key hub for Ukrainian grain exports and abroad since the collapse of the exports deal. I strongly condemn the continued Russian attacks on innocent people, civilian infrastructure, including grain silos in the ports of Reni and Izmail. Romanian Foreign Minister Luminata Odobescu said. Zelensky too condemned the strikes, adding that every Russian attack on them is now a blow to the world food price. It's a blow to social and political stability in Africa and Asia. And it's unacceptable, said U.S. State spokesperson Vedant Patel. Putin simply does not care about the global food security. The possibility of a Russian attack on cargo ships in the Black Sea increased after Moscow said it had fired warning shots from an warship at a cargo vessel headed towards Izmail last week. Analysis, however, said Black Sea shipping has in general remained steady since the end of the grain deal, despite the higher insurance rates. The shipments out of the Ukraine have fallen. Joseph Skulta is carrying more than 30,000 tons of cargo with 12,114 containers, including food products, according to Kubrakov. The vessel is the highest value ship in 60 of the 60 still stuck in Ukraine since the war began. So it's the highest value ship. It's like, I need to get this shit out of here. It's going bad. It's losing its value. And I have a business to run here, people. I don't care about your, little war about, whatever. I guess for him, it's probably not a little war because it's made him stuck in the country since February 2022. But it's the highest value one. So if it's the highest value one, that means that he just doesn't want to lose any more money. According to John Stoppert, Senior Manager of Environment and Trade for the International Chamber of Shipping, which represents 80% of the world's commercial fleet, he noted that China's political closeness to Russia likely helped enable the ship's departure. It's unlikely other vessels will follow, he said, either because of their flags or locations in Ukraine. So, there you go. They've left the country because they happen to be tied to China, and Russia's not going to shoot a China ship because then they're going to lose all of their backing from China, and that would be bad. So the only thing that can happen is Chinese merchants go there and go make bank, I guess, because they're the only ships that won't get shot by a Russian warship.
Yeah, and Chinese economy's kind of weak, so they don't want to weaken their economy anymore by having shipping disruptions.
The end of my story.
Yeah, deflation, as we reported yesterday. Is it my story?
Yeah.
And I promise, well, it's cool that you can braid your hair and read at the same time. I don't think I can do that.
Can you even braid your hair at all?
Probably back when my fingers are smaller.
Oh, okay.
And in scientist news, excuse me, I want to hit the cough button there. Cough button. All right, I'm back.
Welcome back.
I had to cough. That was awful. All right. Also, a story from the New York Times today. Hana Kairos. Scientists recreate Pink Floyd songs by reading brain signals of listeners. Scientists have trained a computer to analyze the brain activity of someone listening to music, and based on only on those neuronal patterns, recreate the song. The research, published on Tuesday, introduced a recognizable, if muffled, version of Pink Floyd's 1979 song, Another Brick in the Wall, Part 1. Before this, researchers had figured out how to use the brain activity to reconstruct music with similar features to the song someone was listening to. Now you can actually listen to the brain and restore the music that the person heard, said Gerwin Schalk, a neuroscientist who directs the research lab in Shanghai and collected data for the study. The researchers also found a spot in the brain's temporal lobe that reacted when volunteers heard the 16th notes of the song's guitar groove. They proposed that this particular area might be involved in our perception of rhythm. This is very interesting, because I've said at one time, you could play that, that little guitar, and that background guitar, or the guitar that's going, right? You could play it all day in the background for me, and it'd be fine. That is so soothing. Anyway, but a significant amount of information conveyed through the speech comes from what linguists call prosodic elements like tone, the things that make us a lively speaker and not a robot. As better understanding how the brain metabolizes music, scientists hope to build a new speech prosthetics for people with neurological diseases affecting their vocal production. The aim is for these devices to relay not only what someone is trying to say, but retain some of the musicality, rhythm, and emotion of the organic speech. And you can maybe make, Stephen Hawking sound like a person instead of that robot he sounded like to everybody else, right? To collect the data for this study, the researchers recorded from the brains of 29 epilepsy patients at the Albany Medical Center in New York State from 2009 to 2015. As part of the epilepsy treatment, the patients had a net of nail-like electrodes implanted in their brains. This created a rare opportunity for the neuroscientists to record from their brain activity while they listen to music. The team chose Pink Floyd song partly because older patients liked it. Oh, you're calling us old now. Got it. If they said, I can't listen to this garbage, then the data would have been terrible, Dr. Schultz said. Plus, the song features 41 seconds of lyrics and 2.5 minutes of moody instrumentals, a combination that was useful in teasing out how the brain processes words versus melody. Robert Knight, neuroscientist at the University of California, Berkeley, and the leader of the team, asked one of his postdoctoral fellows, Ludoc Bellier, to try to use the data to reconstruct the music because he was in a band, Dr. Knight said. The lab had already done similar work reconstructing words. By analyzing the data from every patient, Dr. Bellier identified what parts of the brain lit up during the song and what frequencies these areas were reacting to. Much of like how the resolution of an image depends on the number of pixels, the quality of an audio recording depends on the number of frequencies it can represent. To legibly reconstruct another brick in the wall, the researchers used 128 frequency bands. That meant trading 128 computer models, which collectively brought the song into focus. The researchers then ran the output from 4 individual brains through the model. The resulting recreations were all recognizably the Pink Floyd song, but had noticeable difference. Patient electrodes placement probably explains most of the variance, the researchers said, but personal characteristics like whether a person was a musician also mattered. Other groups doing similar experiments using non-invasive brain scanners such as functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, which gives a less detailed measure of activity but scans across the entire brain. Yu Takagi, a neuroscientist at Osaka University, collaborated with this neuroscientist at Google to use fMRI data to identify a genre of music that a volunteer is listening to while in a brain scanner. Mr. Takagi said the new study was significant because it showed that meaningful data could be collected from a relatively small number of neuronal clusters. You don't need that many electrodes to make something quality. The new research also underscored what makes music different from speech. When the study volunteers heard a song, the right side of their brains tended to be more involved than the left, whereas the opposite happens when people hear plain speech. This finding, replicating previous research, helped explain why some stroke patients who can't speak well can clearly sing sentences. This difficult tour de force, said Robert Zattori, a neuroscientist at McGill University's lab, established how the brain separates lyrics from the music using brain scans. But to play back a song from someone's head, that's a very interesting contribution. Do you want to hear it? 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 Here it is. 15 seconds of a brain doing Another Brick in the Wall, Part 1. That's lyrics. More lyrics. Isn't that cool? That's a brain singing Pink Floyd. Your story.
Our brains are just really complicated computers that we don't know how to translate yet, really. And
All
we're
in
getting
all,
closer.
it's just another brick in the wall. That's the end of the part.
Yeah.
One.
Okay, in odd food news, this is from Damon Carrington, the environmental editor. A new plant-based pork rib to feature edible vegan bones. That's right, you can eat your pork rib without hurting any animal's ribs. And then you can also chew on the bones without harming anybody animal's bones. I don't know what they were using before. I guess they probably were boneless ribs. They just took like, oh, here's ribs, but without the rib part. So now they're finally conquering food here. This is a plant-based pork rib with a twist. Edible vegan bones will soon make their debut on diners' plates, a vegan food company has announced. The idea of the edible bones, produced by Juicy Marbles, began with the manufacturer wanting the bones to be compositable, but then realizing they could just be eaten instead. The first products will be available from the end of August in the UK, EU, and US. I need to remember to look for these and buy them, and then we'll do a little show where I'm like, I ate them, and they were bad or good. I have no idea. The price is yet to be set, and the company will gather customer feedback from the first batches to tweak the product's recipe, name, and packaging before the full launch. The cost will be higher than regular ribs, which are generally a cheap meat product. Okay, then what's the point of them?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Why are they more expensive? Makers of the plant-based meat are continuing to innovate, but some companies in the sector have had a slump in sales as a cost of living crisis pushes shoppers towards cheaper, regular meat. Yeah, no kidding. Cutting traditional meat consumption in rich nations, which people already eat more red meat than is healthy, is vital to tackling the climate crisis. Greenhouse gases emissions from agriculture are dominated by those from livestock, particularly cattle, which make up 15% of the global emissions. Plants cause far lower emissions. Cutting meat and dairy consumption also slashes pollution, land, and water use, with scientists saying it is the single biggest way for people to reduce their impact on the planet. Some bones from plants may be an ideological provocation, but we shouldn't take those things too seriously, said Vladimir Mikovic, co-founder of Juicy Marbles, which is based in Slovenia. It's just fun. Bones invite you to eat with your hands and share food with the whole table. There's a culture of celebration, sharing, and belonging around meat, and anyone cutting down on meat can feel excluded from cultural traditions, he said. That's why we choose ribs as our next product. The company started selling marbled plant-based steak and tenderloin in 2022. Did you know there's actually some fungus, or fungi, I guess you could say, that tastes like meat?
Yeah.
There's a lot of fungi that taste exactly like meat, and you wouldn't even know the difference.
Mushrooms. There's some very tasty mushrooms.
The bones, which have the same amount of protein as beef jerky, need to be baked or fried to produce a crispy snack. After the plant-based meat has been eaten, we started off just by not wanting the bones to be garbage, Mikovic said. My hope is that we can infuse the bones with flavor. We could also cook them in broth. The most important thing that we see how people react. The first batch of soya-based ribs will go on sale in late August. We want to gather as much feedback as possible because friends and family can only take you so far with honest criticism. Oh, they've been feeding it to their friends. Oh yeah, Tom, it's really good. You know? Earlier in August, the vegan burger pioneers Beyond Meat reported sales had fallen by almost a third, with its stock market 90% down on its 2019 peak. Vegan specialists say a meatless farm and plant and bean in the UK went bust earlier this year. The cost of regular meat does not reflect its environmental impact, and many plant-based meat companies are still scaling up production and reducing their costs. But as well as the price factor, Mikovic said the sector had lots of copycat brands trying to take market share without a focus on quality. Yeah, that's how competition works. They're making fake vegan ribs. I'm gonna do that, but they're gonna taste awful. The stock market performance of one company does not make the category viable or not. Nor does a couple of plant-based companies dying, said Mikovic. Business is hard and companies, including meat and dairy, die. Our sales are only going up, although we are a new company. Other meat alternatives are continuing to expand. The Israeli company Aleph Farms recently submitted an application for sales approval in the UK's food regulatory for its steak, cultivated by growing real meat cells in vats. It was the first such application in Europe and followed approval of 2 cultivated chicken products in the US in June. The Czech company Mury unveiled a burger made from cultivated pork in June. Meat and dairy production uses 80% of farmland around the world and causes 60% of agricultural greenhouse gas emissions, but provides only 8% of calories and 37% of protein. A 2022 report from Boston Consulting Group said plant-based meats was by far the most effective climate investment. All right, so everyone get out your wooden spoons and start eating those those vegan ribs, because you're gonna save the world with your vegan ribs.
Well,
I'm not making fun of it. I'm serious, you know.
Well, I know.
Vegan meat. I've seen it, and I probably should start trying it just to see what it tastes like. But as they've said already, still more expensive than normal meat, so it's a risk.
It's really hard to get people to spend their money on something. And again, I think food. Well, first of all, hot sauce. Hot sauce is there for every cooking mistake, and as you said, it's got to become cheaper. And I guess that's about it. It's got to become cheaper. I mean, people are not going to go looking for it unless they're legitimately, thinking about, well, how's the climate affected? How do we raise meat? That's the first thing. How do we raise meat, especially in the United States? These giant food lots, food lots. What do you want to call them? All right, man. My story. And the weather on our hot planet. Did you know that the Pacific Ocean also gets hurricanes? They're not as common, but this year we've already had Dora go all the way from the Atlantic to basically Japan.
Wow.
And now we've got another tropical storm in the Pacific. The first tropical threat in the U.S. this season isn't on the East Coast or the Gulf of Mexico. It's in Southern California. Tropical Storm Hilary formed Wednesday morning along Mexico's western coast and is forecast to bring intense rain to Southern California early next week, which California is really getting a lot of rain this year. If it makes landfall, it would become only the 4th storm at least tropical storm strength to hit the area. Only the 4th storm of at least tropical storm strength to hit the area. Only the 4th. Think about that they know about, since they've been tracking hurricanes. Conditions are favorable for Hilary to increase in intensity over the next 2 or 3 days. The National Hurricane Center forecasts the storm peak intensity Saturday morning as a Category 3. With 120 mile-an-hour winds, the storm is expected to weaken soon after that due to cooler ocean temperatures and potential land interaction with Mexico's Baja just south of California. By Sunday, the heavy rainfall is expected to reach Southern California and southwest Arizona. As a recorded storm has never moved into California as a hurricane, and only 3 storms have made it to California as tropical storms. Nora in 97, Kathleen in 76, and the Long Beach storm in 1939. They didn't name them in 39. Or they didn't realize it was a hurricane, probably. It's like, what? A hurricane, California? You're crazy. That said, there are dozens of instances of tropical rain reaching Southern California and the Southwest from the remnants of tropical storms and hurricanes. Most recently, Hurricane K in 2022 killed a person when their house was caught in a debris flow in San Bernardino County. The National Hurricane Center, a division of the National Weather Service, forecasts that Hilary will transition from a tropical storm to an extratropical storm by Monday morning near California-Mexico border with 60 mile-an-hour maximum sustained winds. Long-range computer models show the potential 40 to 60 mile-an-hour wind gusts on Monday in Southern California, especially in the mountains. The wind damage potential appears to be a minor concern compared to the rainfall threat. There's already a slight risk of flash flooding issued for the region early next week, which would likely be upgraded to a moderate or high risk if the forecast trend towards Southern California continues. The Weather Prediction Center is forecasting rainfall totals of 2 to 4 inches, with isolated areas of 6 inches, a considerable amount of rain in a short time for a tropically dry southwest. That's it. That's the story from our hot planet. And of course, I lived in San Diego for roughly 7 years. No hurricanes. No threats of hurricanes ever.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I've been saying that, tornadoes might be happening in Europe.
There was tornadoes.
More common than you think. There's
Water
might be
spouts.
a new tornado alley in Europe.
Not
somewhere,
California.
So
Won't be California because there's 20 mountains.
but if it
They're
gets
really
hot
high
enough,
mountains.
who cares?
Well, it's just not flat enough for tornadoes to brew. I mean, if it's a giant, humongous storm, I guess we're all dead anyway. At least if you're near it.
End of the world. All right.
It's the end of the world as we know it.
In music news, if Stevie Wonder wants to play it, pay attention. How a bizarre new instrument found unusual success. This is from Alex Daniel on The Guardian. In April 2012, Tim Meeks was a music product trade show in Anaheim, California, when he got a tap on the shoulder. Stevie Wonder was in town. He had heard about the instrument Meeks had invented, a guitar-piano hybrid called the harpeggi, and wanted to give it a go. Minutes later, the two men were hunched over the instrument flanked by 5 bodyguards as Meeks moved the blind musician's thumbs and forefingers across the fretboard to demonstrate how to play. "I love it," said Wonder. "How can I get one?" This was a turning point for Meeks, who has built and sold harpeggis for a workshop in Maryland since 2007. Initially, sales were slow, but a decade's worth of harpeggi performances by Wonder, plus support from Jacob Collier, Harry Connick Jr., and jazz producer Corey Henry, have changed that. Now, Marconi Musical Products Meeks Company has sold nearly 15,000 of them, making him one of the few people alive to have invented a successful new instrument. "I'm a very average musician. The thoughts of me showing Stevie Wonder how to play something is just absurd," says Meeks. "But it's also about the artist. Stevie can choose any instrument he wants to, and if he wants to play this one, people better pay attention." A full-size harpeggi is about 1 meter long and sells for 5,100 euros. That's pounds. That's a lot. What is it made out of? A flat birch body holds. It's pretty big. It's pretty big.
There's very few of them. That's why it's expensive.
A flat birch body holds 24 strings with frets beneath it. It works a bit like a piano, but instead of pressing a key, you're pressing the strings. A bit like an electric guitar, where a magnetic pickup sends the sound to an amplifier. I wanted it to sound like an organic stringed instrument, but use my piano chops rather than learn guitar for 3 years, Meek says. "I guess a lot of the best inventions come out of laziness." I think there might be some audio of it on this YouTube video.
It sounds like Pink Floyd, Another Brick in the Wall, Part 1.
Let me put this through the...
And I'll sing some Stevie Wonder to it. Because I don't have my... Well, I do my keyboard. Don't want to hear that anyway.
So that's what it sounds like. It sounds like, honestly, it sounds exactly like a guitar. The timbre is guitar-like, as the article is written. The notes run in a whole tone across strings and semitones up to frets, yielding fresh harmonic possibilities. I had thousands of sounds available on a keyboard, but none of them felt right, Meek says. "I wasn't trying to dazzle the world with a new sound, rather find a fresh way to think about playing music." Instrument design is a fast-evolving field. Whole schools are even devoted to it. Queen Mary University and Imperial College London jointly run the Augmented Instruments Laboratory, where researchers Leah Mice has developed, among other things, a one-handed violin designed for people with disabilities, chaos bells, a 4 square meter frame of steel tubes that the player touches, tilts, and strikes to produce a cacophonous metallic feedback loop. There's even a gold standard and annual contest for inventors, the Guthman Musical Instrument Competition, run by the Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta. This year's winner was the Zen Flute. Via a mouthpiece, it digitally translates the shape of your mouth into sound. Wow, wow, I guess like that. Wow.
Yeah, Peter Frampton famously, Joe Walsh.
Pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
There was also a synthesizer controlled by an abacus, and a microtonal clarinet that, rather than using tone holes, has a flexible electromagnet strip to control pitch. Nonetheless, even the most esteemed inventions rarely make it past the prototype stage. While the 20th century brought electric guitars, drum machines, and synthesizers, popularizing a new instrument is now trickier. Part of the problem is that artists can produce any sound under the sun using a computer, says Steve Dunnington, product development chief at Moog, the company that developed the first commercially available synthesizer in 1964. For many musicians, making music happens by typing lines of code or creating a sound on a DAW, digital audio workstation, such as GarageBand, he says. We just tend not to think of it as an instrumental. It's the same way we're not holding something, blowing air into it, or whacking it. Hey, you're whacking your keyboard. Meek thinks many investors are going down technological rabbit holes rather than making something usable. Most musicians just want to have a voice, he says. A lot of these instruments are cool. They have features and they're powerful. But does anybody really want to play them, learn them, or go and see someone else perform on them? Of course, not all inventions are dreamed up with others in mind. For Mice, the Chaos Bells inventor, crafting the instrument is part of making your music. Plus, he adds, there's something super punk rock about making your own instrument. The Harpeggiator, meanwhile, is of course to exceed 1 million in sales in 2023, a record year, and Marconi Musical Products recently moved to bigger premises near Baltimore. Meeks even had another monumental moment at the end of July, working in his new office with Spotify, curated playlist on the background. About 6 songs I realized, wait a minute, I recognize that sound. The track was Harpeggiator 1 by Wolfman, aka Jack Stratton, drummer of the cult funk outfit Wolfpack, which features the instrument. That's the first time since founding the company that Harpeggiator music came into my ears randomly without me seeking it out, he says. Now I truly feel like it's got a life of its own. So there you go, you're happy, positive, invent an instrument, and maybe one day you'll be like this guy. I mean, he invented it in 2007, but he only started selling it in 2012, so it took a while, but he's finally seen the success for his work. So I'm
sweet.
Yeah, I guess we'll go listen to some music by this instrument. I mean, it reminds me of older instruments too, like lutes and stuff. You have entire bands who build their entire concept on like being a pagan band and playing, medieval instruments, because that's really the only way a lot of those instruments get played, through like a genre like that. So
right, old timey, what do they call them? Non-conventional. Hey, I got an idea. Well, this is totally related to this, by the way. I just came up with it. I got an idea for AI, and I'm going to timestamp this so if somebody steals it, I can sue them. And then I'm going to call it, you know how people get fantasy football teams, fantasy whatever teams every week, right? Try to win some money, beat other teams. How about a fantasy band league? Like, you draft a bass player from that band, you draft a guitarist from that band, you get a drummer from that band, then you put together your band, and then you have an AI program that will create a piece of music that those 5 people would make, right? Your bass player is Sting, your drummer is Neil Peart, right? Your guitar player is Jimmy Page, your singer is Bob Dylan. What would that sound like, Your keyboard player is Elton John. That's your band. Now they've made a song, AI, right? AI has to know what they sound like because it's supposed to be super intelligent. Okay,
but they're not.
Compose a song that this band would make, and then you play your song, and you can call it Frankenband. Frankenband, there you go. Compose a band of different people that would have never played together.
Artist, because they'll feel like you're stealing their IP, basically.
Oh, you don't make money off it. You're not making money off the music. You're just playing a sport. It's like I'm not making money off of Shohei Ohtani at home run. I mean, I'm not using his likeness or image or projecting his image all over the internet. When I make money in a competition for fantasy points, he's not entitled to that money because he hit the home run. When I gamble on a team, they're not entitled to the money I won. Anyway, that's just my little idea for a little game, and you could keep score and you can win fabulous prizes and just have fun. But yeah, you're not plagiarizing anybody. You're just, here's an example of music they might compose. There's a great show, you can look it up. David Letterman, one night, they heard that the Eagles are really litigious, especially Don Henley. Don't use our music for anything.
Yeah.
Right? So David Letterman asked the CBS lawyers to come up with a song that's really close to Hotel California that the band could play during the interludes between commercials. And they came up with this song. They said, okay, the lawyers cleared this version, right, this song and these lyrics, and they played this song. It was freaking great. It was a great song, actually. It was just some song close enough to Hotel California, but not quite Hotel California, so they couldn't get sued. Pretty funny. Anyway, my stupid idea that I talked about way too long. All right. What day is it today? Or, I'm sorry, what happened in this day in history, August 17th? In 1590, John White returned from England to Roanoke Island off the coast of present-day North Carolina to search for the following day found no trace of the colony that he had left there 3 years earlier. Really hard to read today. 1807, the first serviceable steamboat, the Clermont, designed by American engineer Robert Fulton, embarked on its maiden voyage, and nobody was barking. In 1887, Marcus Garvey, a charismatic black leader who helped found the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the UNIA, which sought, among other things, to build Africa a black-governed nation, was born in Jamaica. So they write some convoluted long sentences here. 1896, George Washington Cormack unearthed gold in Bonanza Creek and a tributary off the Klondike River in Yukon, Canada, setting off the gold rush into the Klondike Valley. That happened in 1896. In 1906, on this day, American chemist and businesswoman Hazel Bishop, who founded a makeup company and created the first kiss-proof lipstick, was born in Hoboken, New Jersey. In 1943, Robert De Niro, American actor, was born. 1945, English author George Orwell published Animal Farm, an anti-utopian satire that became a classic. And again, speaking of Pink Floyd, another Pink Floyd album, Animals, based on that. 1978, Ben L. Abruzzo, Maxie Anderson, and Larry Newman completed the first transatlantic balloon flight in Double England 2. That's right, they could not afford plane tickets. In 1999, a 7.4 magnitude earthquake struck near Izmit, Turkey, killing more than 17,000 people and leaving 5,000 homeless. So we've had a pretty bad earthquake in Turkey this year also. So they happen a lot, apparently, in Turkey. At the Olympics in Beijing, American swimmer Michelle. At the Olympics in Beijing, American swimmer Michael Phelps, who sometimes people call him Michelle when they can't read, helped his team win the 4x100 medley relay, becoming the first athlete to win 8 medals in a single game. And our featured event is 1945. Indonesia declared its independence. On this day in 1945, Sukarno declared Indonesia's independence from the Netherlands. And after the Dutch transferred sovereignty 4 years later, he served as the country's first president. Birthdays today. Sir V.S. Naipaul, Trinidadian British writer, was born on this day. 1932. Thierry Henry, French football player and manager, was born this day in 1977. 1960 is the birthday of Sean Penn, American actor. 1944, Larry Ellison, American business executive, was born, and we already covered Robert De Niro. So Robert De Niro and Sean Penn have the same birthday. Didn't know that. 1929, Francis Gary Powers, the United States military officer who was famously shot down over Moscow or Russia in a U-2 spy plane back in the 1960s. Well, anyway, he turns 94 today, if he is alive. Well, he still turns 94. And what day is it? Do you want to know? Or you just want to know how to organize everything you do for the rest of this period of time we call a day? It is National Nonprofit Day, which is me. I never make a profit. And National Thrift Shop Day. So go to your nonprofit thrift shop. Kill two birds with one stone. And it's National Massachusetts Day. It's Black Cat Appreciation Day. You're going to love that one. Go appreciate your cat now. And your black cat. Don't appreciate any other cats today, just the black ones.
100%, I agree.
Totally disregard the rest. National Hazy IPA Day. Yeah, if you can't make beer and it's all cloudy and you want to drink it anyway because you already spent the money, it's your day. And it's National I Love My Feet Day because, well, where would I be without my feet? That's it.
Where would I be without my feet?
I'd be standing on stubs.
All right, well, that's been Allison here from the Netherlands. Ooh, I only had 3 hours of sleep, so I don't know what I'm going to do today.
They're going to sleep.
And we are going to see you tomorrow on Friday to tie off the end of the week.
This is Roger, United States, with more news tomorrow because maybe we'll do a news wrap-up because there's a lot of stuff we did. A lot of stuff got lost this week, and it's these indictments and everything else, but we've already on too long. So this is Roger from the United States with the comprehensive news of planet Earth on Before Coffee. Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.